So today I will discuss my next topic, that is genetic counseling. Before starting my topic genetic counseling, firstly I want to explain about what is genetics. So the term genetics was first introduced by Betson in 1906. It has been derived from Greek word gene, which means to become or to grow into. So here the term genetics was first introduced by Bettison in 1906, and it is derived from Greek word gene, which means to become or to grow into. So genetic mainly is defined as a branch of medical science which is concerned with the transmission of characteristics from parents to their offspring. And Gregor Johann Mendel is the father of genetics. So, what is genetics? Genetics is defined as a branch of medical science which concerned with the transmission of characteristics from parents to their offspring. So, general concept about the genetics, this class have been discussed earlier also, but still I will discuss it in short. So about the general concept of genetic means, there are certain definitions like inheritance. So what is inheritance? Inheritance means passing of familial element from one generation to the next. So inheritance means passing of familial elements from one generation to the next. Second is gene. What is gene? Gene basically is the basic unit of genetic information, and genes determine the inherited characteristics. So gene is the basic unit of genetic information, and genes determine the inherited characters, and it is a functional subunit of DNA, and it contains the instructions for making a protein. So gene is the functional subunit of DNA, and it contains instructions for making protein. Then chromosome. Chromosome is the storage unit of genes, a structure within the cell that deliver the genetic material or DNA. Chromosome is the storage unit of genes, a structure within the cell that deliver the genetic material or DNA. Then DNA. DNA is the deoxyribonucleic acid. So DNA is a nucleic acid that contains the genetic instruction specifying the biological development of a cellular forms of life. So DNA is a nucleic acid that contains the genetic instructions specifying the biological development of a cellular forms of life and encodes the genetic information. And genome. What is genome? Genome is the collection of genetic information. So, this is a short introduction about the concept of genetics, some of the introduction. Then we'll come to the topic, that is genetic counseling. So, what is genetic counseling? Genetic counseling is a process by which patient or relatives at risk of an inherited disorder are advised of the consequences and nature of the disorder, the probability of developing or transmitting it, and the options open to them in management and family planning in order to prevent or avoid it. So here what it is written, genetic counseling is a process by which patients or relatives at risk of an inherited disorder. Inherited disorder means, earlier I have told about inherited disorder. It is passing of familial elements from one generation to the next. So here they are at risk of inherited disorder, and they are advised of the so there are four things. They are advised of consequences and nature of disorder, and probability of developing or transmitting the disorder, and options open to them in management, and also fourth, that is family planning in order to prevent it. So this is known as genetic counseling. Then the next is aims of genetic counseling. So what are the aims of genetic counseling? Here the genetic counseling aims to provide the family with complete and accurate information about the genetic disorder. So here Genetic counseling, what is the main aim of genetic counseling? Genetic counseling aims to provide the family with complete and accurate information about the genetic disorder. So there are five aims of genetic counseling. First, promoting informed decision by involving the family members. So here they will promote informed decisions by involving the family members. Second is they will clarify the family's options, available treatment and prognosis. So they will clarify the options available to them in management and treatment. And third is explaining the alternatives to reduce the risk of genetic disorder. So they will explain what all are the other alternatives that helps to reduce the risk of genetic disorder. Fourth is decreasing the incidence of genetic disorder, and fifth is reducing the impact of the genetic disorder. So these are all the aims of genetic counseling. Then next is functions of genetic counseling session. So here are the four functions of genetic counseling session. First is provide information. So here the genetic counselor will provide information about the disease condition and the nature of the disorder. Then available solution. So here genetic counselor will give the available solution or option open to them in the management or treatment. And third is help person to understand and cope with the conditions. So here genetic counselor will help the person to understand the situation and also help him or her to cope up with their solutions or conditions. So and here fourth one is testing the risk of recurrence. So genetic counselor will also help in the testing of the risk of recurrence. So here are the four functions of the genetic counseling session. Then next slide is who are genetic counselors. So here the question comes or arise, which is very important to know, that who are the genetic counselors. So who are genetic counselors? Genetic counselors are postgraduate health professionals with a graduate diploma or masters in genetic counseling. So they are the postgraduate health professional with a graduate diploma or masters in genetic counseling, and they will be having an experience in the area of medical genetics as well as counseling. And they will identify the family at risk and will investigate the problems present in the family, will interpret the information about the disorder, will analyze the inheritance pattern, risk of reoccurrence, and review the available options with the family. So here genetic counselor, what he will do, he will identify the family at risk and will investigate the problem that is present in that family, and will also interpret the information about the disorder, will analyze the inheritance pattern and risk of reoccurrence, and also review the available options for the treatment within the family. Then what is the role of genetic counselor? So what are the role of genetic counselor? Here we will see genetic counselor provide genetic information. It is their counseling skills, including their ability to empathically connect with their patient, that leads to demands for their skills. So genetic counselor, what they do, they provide genetic information. It is their counseling skills, including their ability to empathically connect with their patient, that leads to demand for their skills. So to empathically connect with their patient means to put particular importance on something. So here what the genetic counselor is doing, he is putting the particular importance to that family, to that patient. Then second is good genetic counselor have many strengths. They make their client best interest their foremost priority and are keenly attuned to complex professional and ethical challenges. So here uh, good genetic counselor has many strengths, and they make their client best interests their foremost priority, and they are keenly attuned. Keenly attuned means especially able to understand and deal with their complex professional and ethical challenges. So here genetic counselor is attuned to their complex professional and ethical challenge, means able to understand and deal with their challenges. Then next is genetic counselor use non-directive counseling method to provide the best services to those who need them. So genetic counselor, what they are doing, they are using non-directive counseling. Non-directive counseling method means is to listen, support and advise without directing a client course of action, that is without forcing. So here genetic counselor is using a non-directing counseling method. Then next is to develop a mutual relationship with the client, to understand her or him, to relieve any psychological distress, to promote a sense of control and help find solution to specific problems. So here genetic counselor will develop a mutual relationship with their client and understand their client, to relieve their psychological distress and promote a sense of control and help find the solution to their specific problems. Then next role of genetic counselor is the counselor tend to give advice, make decision, be coercive, persuasive, influencing, directing and controlling. So here the counselor tend to give advice and helps in making the decision and be coercive. Be coercive means uh, he will help the patient to make the correct decision. And persuasive means he will be able to persuade the patient to make the decisions. Influencing, directing and also controlling. Then next is the counselor communicates, enables, explores, encourages, informs, offers choices, discusses, promotes autonomy, is empathetic, non-judgmental and respectful of the client. So here the counselor communicates, enables, explores, encourages the patient, informs about the disease condition, will offer the choices of the treatment option, discuss with the client and promote the autonomy, and is empathetic, will be non-judgmental and also respect the client. So here are the roles of genetic counselor. So you can see the picture of the genetic counselor giving advices to the patient. Now next we will discuss the indications of genetic counseling. So here are some of the indications of the genetic counseling. What are the signs that shows that people needs genetic counseling? First is hereditary disease in a patient or family. If a patient or a family is having a hereditary disease, so that may be the indication of the genetic counseling. Birth defect like congenital heart disease or Down syndrome or cleft lip and cleft palate, etc. Then mental retardation is also one of the indication. And advanced maternal age means pregnancy at age of 35 or older. Then early onset of cancer in a family, if anyone is having an early onset of cancer in their family. Then if a person is having a miscarriage. Then malformation, if any malformation is there in the fetus like congenital malformation, spina bifida, any type of limb defect or cleft lip or cleft palate, etc. Then tendency to develop a neurological conditions may develop, like neurological condition means any disorder of a nervous system or any structural, biochemical and electrical abnormalities in the brain or spinal cord or any of the other nerves. So here are few indications of the genetic counseling. Then next is the purpose of genetic counseling. So here are the four main purpose of genetic counseling. First is pedigree, second is ethnicity, third is consanguinity, and fourth is exposure during the pregnancy. So which we will deal one by one. First is pedigree. So Mm, Here in pedigree in all types of genetic counseling, an important aspect of the counseling process is information gathering about the family and medical history. So information gathered is performed by drawing a chart called a pedigree. So you can see the picture. Information is being gathered by drawing a chart called a pedigree, and pedigree is made up of symbols and lines that represent a family history. Pedigree mainly, it's a type of diagrammatic representation of a disease history in a family up to third degree relative. So here you can see a chart of a pedigree. It is a diagrammatic representation of disease history in a family up to third degree relative. Then second is ethnicity. So ethnicity, in obtaining a family history, a genetic counselor asks about a person's ethnicity or ancestral origin. So there are some ethnic groups that have a higher chance of being a carriers of some of the genetic disease or abnormality. For example, the chance that an African American is a carrier of a gene for sickle cell disease is 1 in 10. And also people of Jewish or Central European ancestry are likely to be the carrier of cystic fibrosis. So here counselor discuss the inheritance patterns of these disease, carrier risk and genetic screening or testing options. Then third is consanguinity. Another question the genetic counselor will ask is about obtaining a family history, whether the couple are related to one another by blood. So here mainly the practice of marrying or having children with relative is infrequent in the United States but is more common in other countries. When two are related by blood, there are increased chances or more chances for their children to be affected. That is to be affected with conditions that are inherited in the recessive pattern. In recessive inheritance means, in recessive inheritance what happened, parents of a child affected with a disease carries a single gene. The child gets two copies, one from each parent, and is affected. So in recessive inheritance what happened, parents of a child affected with a disease carries a single gene. The child gets two copies, one from each parent, and is affected. So that is known as consanguinity, where the couples are related with their blood. Then fourth and the last one is exposure during the pregnancy. So during prenatal genetic counseling, here the counselor will ask about the pregnancy history. Pregnancy history, about that if mother is taking any type of exposures like oral exposure, any type of food contaminants. Here you can see in the pictures any type of accumulation or any dermal exposure if mother is having, or any type of inhalation exposures of the heavy metals. So counselor will ask about the pregnancy history of the mother and will also discuss the possibility of the adverse effect. So these are the purpose of genetic counseling. Then next are the steps of genetic counseling. Here mainly there are 5 steps of genetic counseling. An accurate diagnosis of disorder. To complete an accurate diagnosis, the following procedure should be followed. So to complete the accurate diagnosis, the following procedure should be followed. Firstly, history. First step is history. So history, a proper record of the history of the patient is necessary. So here history taking is very necessary. This include both present and relevant past history. So here history include both the present history and also the past history, and family history includes siblings and other relatives also. And kindly note if there is any other person in the family with the similar problem. So we have to also mention if there is any other person in the family who are having a similar problem related to them. And objective history of including exposure to any type of teratogens, any type of drugs or x-rays during pregnancy, or history of abortion or stillbirth, or any miscarriages should be recorded. An inquiry should be made about the consanguinity as it increases the risk, especially in autosomal recessive disorder. So earlier in purpose I have told about the consanguinity. So here the first step is over. Second is pedigree charting. Pedigree I have already told in purpose. Pedigree charting at glance, this offers in a concise manner the state of disorder in a family, means diagrammatic representation of a family history. Constructing a pedigree with a proper interrogation through time consuming is ultimately a rewarding process. It forms an indispensable steps towards the counseling. So pedigree charting is very important. Then third is the estimation of risk. So in estimation of risk, it forms one of the most important aspect of the genetic counseling, and it is often called as recurrence risk. To estimate it, one requires to take into account the following points. To estimate this, one requires to take into account the following point, that is mode of inheritance, analysis of a pedigree or a family tree, and results of various tests. Mode of inheritance means whether it is an autosomal dominant disorder, or whether it is an autosomal recessive disorder, or whether it is an X-linked dominant disorder or recessive disorder. So these are the modes of inheritance. And second is analysis of pedigree or family tree. So it is very important to analyze the pedigree or family history of the patient and results of various tests. So there are various tests that is performed like amniocentesis, chorion, villus biopsy, ultrasonography, etc. This will deal later in later slides. So the result of various tests is also very important for the estimation of risk. Then is transmitting information. After completing the diagnosis, pedigree charging and estimation of risk, the next most important step of communicating this information to the consultation. So we have to transmit all those information to the consultant, and the important function involve various factors. So there are various factors involved, that is psychology of the patient, emotional stress under the prevailing circumstances, attitude of family members towards the patient, that is important, the attitude of family member towards the patient, and the educational, social and financial background of the family, and also the gaining confidence of the consultants in subsequent meeting during the follow up, and then ethical, moral and legal implications involved in this process, and above all communication skill to transmit facts in an effective manner, that is making them more acceptable and palatable. So these are the transmitting information. The last step is the management. Management in genetic treatment implies a very limited scope. It naturally aims for the prevention rather than cure. So in management process, it mainly the aim of the management is prevention rather than cure. In fact, for most of the genetic disorder, cure is unknown, and the treatment is therefore directed towards minimizing the damage by early detection and preventing the further irreversible damage. So treatment is directed towards minimizing the damage by early detection and preventing further irreversible damage. Then we will see types of genetic counseling. So there are two types of genetic counseling. First is the prospective genetic counseling, and second is the retrospective genetic counseling. So first, that is prospective genetic counseling. This allows for the prevention of disease. So prospective genetic counseling allows for true prevention of disease. This approach requires identifying heterozygous individual for any particular defect by screening. So here we have to identify the heterozygous individual. Heterozygous means that if an organism has two different allele of a single gene, means that if an organism heterozygous means if an organism has two different alleles of a gene. So here we have to identify the heterozygous individual for any particular defect by screening process, and explain to them the risk of their having affected children. So here counselor will explain the parents the risk of having an affected children if they marry another heterozygous of the same gene. So here counseling is delivered to client or couple of reproductive age before the conception or before the birth of an affected child. So it provides the counseling prior to the conception. That's why it is known as true prevention of disease. That is known as prospective genetic counseling. Then if heterozygous marriage can be prevented or reduced, the prospects of giving birth to affected children will diminish. So here, if heterozygous marriage will be prevented or it will if it will reduce, the prospects of giving the birth to affected child may be diminished. And for example, water disease can be there. For example, sickle cell anemia and thalassemia. Now the second type is the retrospective genetic counseling. So most genetic counseling at present is retrospective, that is the heredity disorder has already occurred within the family. Mainly retrospective genetic counseling is given after the birth of an affected child. So most of the cases here at present is retrospective because the hereditary disorder is already occurred in the family. It helps to determine why a particular disorder has occurred in a family and also helps to assist the families in coping with the crisis situation. And the method which could be suggested under the retrospective genetic counseling are contraception and second is pregnancy termination. So these two are the available options for them. So this is known as the retrospective genetic counseling. Then is the pediatric genetic counseling. So pediatric genetic counseling here, the families or pediatrician seek genetic counseling when a child has featured of an inherited condition. So here family or pediatrician, when they will seek genetic counseling when a child is having any type of feature of an inherited condition, and any child who is born with more than one defect, mental retardation or any type of dysmorphic feature has an increased chance of having a genetic syndrome. So if any child is born with more than one defect, for example any type of mental retardation, or if child is having any dysmorphic dysmorphic features mean any type of abnormal mm, differences in the body structure, so that has an increased chance of having a genetic syndrome. And a common type of mental retardation in male for which genetic testing is available is the Fragile X syndrome. It is a genetic condition that which causes intellectual disability. And genetic testing is also available for many other childhood illness such as hemophilia or muscular dystrophy also. Then is a genetic screening. So genetic screening, a search in apparently normal population for individual with abnormal genes which increases their risk or their offspring of being affected by a disease. So here what it is saying, it is a search in apparently normal population for individual means in genetic screening what happened, they search for individual with abnormal genes from a normal population, and as they increases their risk or their offspring of being affected by a disease. And mainly the main aim of such screening program is to identify people with genetic disorder for early detection and treatment. So the main aim for this screening program is to identify people with genetic disorder for early detection and treatment. Then some of the purpose of genetic screening is to identify individual with a genetic disease. So they will identify an individual with a genetic disease and will identify the individual at increased risk of having a children with a serious genetic problem, and will identify individual with a genetic predisposition to a disease. So these are the purpose of a genetic screening. Then prenatal diagnosis. In genetic screening, prenatal diagnosis is very important. So prenatal diagnosis forms an integral step in genetic counseling. Prenatal diagnosis is a very integral step in the genetic counseling, in fact, for couples at risk of a disorder. And it is desirable to consider, plan, and discuss the prenatal diagnosis even before pregnancy. Discussion and planning beforehand will eliminate the hurried procedure and emotional trauma as well. So here, if they will discuss before the pregnancy, so that discussion and planning beforehand will eliminate the hurried procedure and emotional trauma as well. And जो prenatal diagnosis, the main goal of prenatal diagnosis is to assess the pregnancy, to determine the specific risk to fetus, to educate the family about the diagnosis, likely outcomes, potentials, and management option, and to provide the psychosocial support and follow up to the families. So here there are certain approaches to prenatal diagnosis which we will discuss one by one. Amniocentesis, Corion-Willis biopsy, ultrasonography, fetoscopy, fetal blood sampling, prenatal diagnosis, and maternal blood screening. So here first is amniocentesis. Amniocentesis, the ideal time to undertake this investigation is between 14th and 16th week, when a sufficient amount of amniotic fluid is available for tapping without harming the conception. Means the ideal time of undertaking the investigation is between the 14 and 16 weeks of conception, when there is a sufficient amount of amniotic fluid is available in the fetus for tapping without harming the conception. So here procedure is there of the amniocentesis. First is under ultrasound control, placental localization is done. So under the ultrasound we will locate the placenta, where is the placenta, and then under the local anesthesia the fluid is tapped per abdomen, avoiding the injury to the placenta. So here you can see the picture. Here you can see the picture. There is a placenta and the fluid is taken. It is the fetus, and ultrasound transducer is there, and the fetal blood sample is taking. So here under local anesthesia the fluid is tapped per abdomen, avoiding injury to the placenta, and a clear tap, not a blood stained one, must be ensured. About 10 to 20 cc of fluid is taken out and is subjected to analysis in the laboratory. So here 10 to 20 cc of fluid is taken out and is subjected to the analysis in the laboratory. The cells and fluid are separated by centrifugation. So here the cells and fluid both are being separated by centrifugation process, and the cells can be studied directly or subjected to culture studied for obtaining the fetal karyotype. So here you can see the procedure of the amniocentesis, where ultrasound transducer is there, fetus is there, and placenta, and here there you can see fetus blood sample is taken. Then the Corion-Willis biopsy. In this procedure, in Corion-Willis biopsy, what happened? The chorionic villi are aspirated with the help of cannula. So here you can see a small cannula is there, and the chorionic villi are aspirated with the help of that cannula, which is introduced through the cervix uteri, and the procedure is done under the ultrasound control, and the ideal time to perform the Corion-Willis sampling CVS is 8 to 10 weeks of the period of conception. However, it may be undertaken till almost 12 weeks. So here you can see in the picture that chorionic villi are aspirated with the help of a cannula, which is introduced to the cervix, and it is performed in 8 to 10 weeks of a period, and can also be taken up to 12 weeks. So that is known as Corion-Willis biopsy. Then is ultrasonography. The third one is ultrasonography. Here the underlying principle in the procedure is that the echoes generated by the reflection of ultrasound waves are displayed in one of the two ways. So here are two ultrasound waves that is displayed. First is the B, that is brightness mode. So here B stands for the brightness mode. So in this, cross section of the anatomy is created as transducer is moved across an area. So here, when the transducer is moved across the area, it will evaluate the developing fetus. It will evaluate the organs including liver, spleen, kidney, thyroid gland, testes, breasts, and also the prostate gland. So here here B scans give two-dimensional information about the cross section. And then second is the real-time imaging. In this, repetitive B mode images are generated in rapid sequence, allowing the appreciation of motion. So in real-time imaging, repetitive B mode images are generated at rapid sequence at a rate exceeding about 25 frames per second, which is high enough to create the impression for continuity of events in a time. So these are the two ultrasound waves. First is B, that is brightness mode, and second is the real time imaging. Then is the fetoscopy. The procedure involved visualization of fetus using a fiber optic self illuminated instrument called fetoscope. So here fetoscopy is the procedure which involves the visualization of the fetus using an instrument called fetoscope, that is fiber optic self illuminated instrument called fetoscope. And so, it is inserted in the amniotic cavity under the local anesthesia, and it is usually done around 18 to 22 weeks of gestation. And with this one can detect any type of limb malformation or any facial defect or defect on cleft lip, cleft palate, ear defect, or defects involving the genitals. So here the fetoscope is inserted into the amniotic fluid or amniotic cavity under the local anesthesia, and it is done around the 18 to 22 weeks of gestation. And here we can detect the abnormalities like limb malformation, facial defect like cleft lip, cleft palate, ear defect, or defect involving the genitals. And the procedure carries a risk of abortion to the tune of 3% to 5%. Fetoscope is usually useful in obtaining fetoscopic skin biopsy or fetal blood sampling. So this procedure of fetoscopy is also having the risk of abortion up to 3% to 5%, and it is useful in obtaining fetoscopic skin biopsy and fetal blood sampling. Then here next is the FBS, that is fetal blood sampling. So fetal blood sampling is done in two ways, that is placental aspiration, that is an indirect tap, and second is the sampling under the direct vision. So in the former technique, both the maternal and fetal blood cells are mixed, need to be separated before sample process. So here what happened in this technique, both the maternal and fetal blood cells are mixed. So they need to be separated, both maternal and fetal blood cells need to be separated before the sampling process. In the second case, what happens, sample is obtained under the direct vision using a fetoscope, and both techniques carry about 10% risk of abortion. So here both the techniques is having a 10% risk of abortion, and there are number of conditions in which fetal blood sampling is needed to make prenatal diagnosis. So here there are number of conditions where FBS is important, that is sickle cell disease is there, thalassemia, hemophilia, and Duchenne muscle dystrophy, and immune deficiency disorder. Duchenne muscle dystrophy means it is a type of a progressive muscular weakness. So these are all the following conditions which require a fetal blood sampling, that is FBS. Then is the maternal serum sample. That is alpha fetoprotein, that is estimation of AFP. alpha fetoprotein. In maternal serum, it estimation of AFP in maternal serum is used as a screening test for the detection of neural tube defect. So here it is used as a screening test to detect neural tube defect, and this test is advocated for all pregnant women, realizing the fact that about 90% babies with a neural tube defect are born to couples having no family history of such disorder. So here it is suggested to all the pregnant women. Why? Because most of the time the couples is having no family history of such disorder, and the maternal serum shows AFP increment during 16 to 18 weeks of gestation. So here in maternal serum, AFP increment will be there in 16 to 18 weeks of gestation, means AFP will be elevated in the maternal serum, which is encountered in other conditions like in twin pregnancy. AFP may be evaluated, or if or in mixed or threatened abortion also AFP is evaluated. So having noted evaluated AFP, the patient is referred for ultrasonography and subsequently amniocentesis. So here it is completed, and next our topic is the ethical principle applied to genetic counseling. So here are a few of the ethical principle that is applied to genetic counseling. First is respect for person and family regarding the information. So a genetic counselor have to respect the person and her family regarding the information. And preservation of family integrity, genetic counselor should preserve the family integrity. Full disclosure of all information relevant to the health to individual and family. The genetic counselor have to disclose all the information relevant to their health to the individual and also to the family. Protection of the privacy of individual and family from unjustified intrusion. So genetic counselor have to kept in mind about the protection of the privacy of the individual and family, and information to individual and families about possible misuses of genetic information by institutional third parties. So we have to, genetic counselor also have to provide the information to the individual and families about the possible misuse of the genetic information by any other institution or third party. So these are few of the ethical principles that are applied to the genetic counseling. Now last is role of a nurse in genetic counseling. So here are the few roles of a nurse of genetic counseling. Receive the client and family and make them comfortable in assessment room for genetic counseling. So here nurse have to receive the client and the family members and make them comfortable in assessment room for genetic counseling. Nurse have to obtain the prenatal family and other health history, that is pedigree charting from individual and family, which is most important. And nurse have to conduct the primary physical information and collect other relevant information, provide psychological and psychosocial support to the individual and family throughout the counseling. And nurse has to provide the information about the heredity disease and their patterns. And also nurse have to collect other relevant information from individual and family, that is for example any prior test reports or any documents etc. And then nurse have to encourage the individual and other family members to ask the question as much as they can understand about all aspects of disorder. So nurse will encourage the family members to ask the questions to the counselor, that if they are having any doubt regarding any type of disease conditions which they are facing. And then nurse have to establish a plan of care with the family and coordination care with the family and other healthcare professionals. And nurse have to maintain the privacy and confidentiality of all the information. So here are the some of the role of a nurse. So here completes my genetic counseling. So here completes a topic. So if you are having any doubts or any questions regarding the topic, you can ask. So thank you.